right, we'll get going. Really not much to catch up from Saturday. From an injury standpoint, I know Randy asked on Monday about Colin Newell was available last week. Probably was the best that he had been in terms of coming back to practice and practice all last week. Just didn't feel comfortable with him being ready to go totally last week as we went through warm-ups. Greg Eisworth, practice yesterday, so we'll kind of see how he progresses through the week, but he was on the practice field practicing. I would say he's probable for the game as we go into the game this week. Other than that, I think we're pretty much at full strength. West Virginia, great opponent right now. I think playing with a lot of confidence. They've had some really good wins early in the football season. Thought played really great last week. A football team that's certainly playing really inspired and really impressed, obviously, with Coach Brown, their staff, what they do, and their kids are playing really, really hard, and I think a really skilled football team. So it'll be a great challenge for us, obviously, a really hard place to play. So I think a lot of challenges for our Cyclones this coming Saturday. But with that said, I'll answer any questions you have for me.
How much has Brock helped just the running game in general this season?
Obviously he's a part of our running game because he's got the ability to run the football. So I just think, he gives us another option in terms of making teams defend the entire field. So, I think that's something that you saw last year him do at times, and he's certainly been able to do that at times for us and allow us to take advantage of some mismatches in the running game.
We've talked about Brock a lot. We've talked about Lima a lot. We've talked about Orion and some of those people. Who haven't we talked about? Who's unsung out there that maybe you wouldn't be where you are now?
Yeah, I think offensively, if you ask that question, I would say Josh Kniffel. I think Josh's leadership, the consistency that he's played with really through 5 weeks in the football season, he's kind of been an anchor to somebody that said, man, what do you want an Iowa State offensive lineman to look like and feel like? His work ethic, and then what the product is on the football field. He was our offensive player of the game. I think graded out at 87%, 10 knockdowns in the game this past Saturday. Playing really special football his senior year, which is really exciting. And then I think on the defensive side, Lawrence White, probably a huge story for this team. I think Lawrence is really playing good football. Played his best 5 games of his career so far this football season, and we needed that consistency, challenge Lawrence to become that kind of player for us on the defensive side of the football. And man, he's playing really good football for us right now. So I would say those two. And special teams, probably Landon Akers so far. What that guy's done and meant to our football team in terms of special teams. The 2 plays he makes in the game, the 1 kickoff that he does an incredible job running down on that. I want to say it's the 2nd or 3rd kickoff of the game, and he literally forces the returner to go back, and we end up tackling on about the 9-yard line. It's Landon's effort and speed that allows it to do it. The play he makes on the punt where he fair catches it on the 4, and then obviously the play where he makes the fair catch happen to the best punt returner in the country last week. I thought was a huge play. Joe punts it 59 yards, and Landon's got the ability to force that fair catch. But I think those 3 kind of are guys that are playing at a really high level and probably not getting talked about enough.
I know on Saturday you said that when the quarterback design runs, you don't differentiate that with the yards they get with the running backs and stuff. But with Brock's running ability, is there something different you do get having it come from the quarterback position versus the running backs, just in terms of how it can create different dynamics within the offense?
Well, I just think, again, the more ways in college football today, and really professional football, that you force defenses to defend the entire field and defend multiple things, the more you're going to be successful. And being able to do that still with a base foundation of what you do well is the key to success. And, I think having the ability to have some mobility at quarterback allows you to force defenses to, number 1, be sound, number 2, be disciplined, and number 3, have gap integrity. And, I think that's something that, some mobility at quarterback, you don't even have to be a dynamic runner, can allow you to, put into your offensive game plan, and it's something that obviously Brock's given us at times.
Saturday, the guys talked about having fun again playing football. Do you feel like your locker room was maybe pressing or felt a little bit of pressure to achieve some of those expectations that were put on them preseason?
Yeah, and I do, and to be honest with you, I think, and I don't think it even had anything to do with expectations outside of here, as it has to do with expectations that this group of young men have for themselves. And I think this is a group of overachievers in a lot of ways. This is a group of kids that have really strained as hard as any group of kids I've been around or seen to become the best version of themselves. And I can go back to January and February and March and tell story after story of these guys that have really strained and sacrificed a great deal to become the best of them. And I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this team is that effort, and I've appreciated about this group. But I also think one of the things that sometimes it does is you see them enjoy the process to get there, and then you get to the 60 minutes that, you know, all that joy that you worked really hard to obtain, and you get there and you almost, man, you start to press because you want to be so perfect in the moment. And I think that you were seeing that, and I think sometimes even for myself or our coaches, you know, you see that sometimes where you lose, it's almost a relief to get the game over with, and then get on to back into the process where you feel really comfortable. And so it's something that we've just had to work through, and I think that's something that's a new dynamic for us, because I think the majority of our team really lives in that world. And so we've talked a lot about it over the last couple of weeks, and I think you see our team starting to understand themselves and understand you know, what allows us to be the best version of us as this team goes. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
You guys have scored on 9 of your last 11 possessions in the fourth quarter. While some teams might be wearing down late in the game, what has allowed you guys to continue to have success offensively?
You know, I think the one thing about this group offensively, and again, I'm going to put, you know, credit to obviously the players and the offensive staff. I think one thing that I really like about the continuity on this offensive staff, and I think the alignment, I talked a little bit about that before the season started, is the communications as clear as we've had it. And when you have really good, clear communication, I think it allows you to adjust in game. You know, today defenses are doing the same thing I'm talking about offensively. They show you one thing on video, but they're not. And a good defense is probably going to play something different, or they're going to have tweaks. And so, you know, I think one of the things that we've done a really good job of as an offensive staff, and credit to Coach Manning, Coach Gordon, Coach Shieldhouse, Coach Golish, you know, Coach Myers, is their ability to in-game adjust. I think you see us get better as the game goes on, and I do think that's really important. And then you better have a quarterback that understands what that communication's doing and be able to then communicate it to the 10 other players. And that's where Brock, I think, has grown immensely, and he's been able to understand what's going on in the game. You know what, I've seen this, I understand what you guys are saying, let's make these adjustments and then let's grow forward. So I think some of that's just a maturity and alignment that's maybe as good as we've had since we've been here.
Matt, you've been pretty good on the road in league play, 5-4, I think, the last 2 seasons. That's obviously hugely important if you want to compete for championships, but what do you do to instill that in teams, whereas a lot of times you see teams excel at home and then they go on the road and they look like a different team?
Yeah, you know, I just think the biggest thing again is on the road, at home, in the rain, we've lived all of it, right? Like, the reality of it is you only get those 60 minutes, and as soon as you realize that none of that matters, and all that matters is how I practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then it allows me to be confident when the game comes on Saturday, wherever that game is and however the environment is around me. It allows me to sink back into my preparation. It allows me to sink back into my fundamentals and details. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've learned about ourselves is we can't control any of those things. We can't control the environment. We can't control if there's a great crowd or a bad crowd. We can't control if we're home or away. What we can control is the preparation to get there. And I think, you know, and I think you guys know me enough, that's been the same mantra since the day that I've gotten here, that process of preparation, because I really believe it allows you to handle whatever comes your way. Positive, negative, whatever environment you get into, it allows you to be the best version of you when you need to be the best version of you. And I think the more we've matured as a team, you've seen us be able to get better and handle all different kinds of situations that can occur in that 60 minutes of a college football game.
I think your original plan was to grayshirt Zach Peterson at first, kind of when you were recruiting him, I guess. What kind of changed and how have your expectations maybe changed for him? Did you expect him to, I guess, be doing what he's been doing so quickly?
Well, bad coaching, you know what I mean? Let's put that first and foremost, man. What a ding dong I was thinking we were gonna grayshirt Zach Peterson. You know, we've had that conversation before, and in all honesty, Zach was, you know, a little bit skinny. You know, he doesn't look like this WWE wrestler that he does now, but you know, he was skinny, a little bit undersized, and I think what I loved about Zach was I loved the motor that you saw and we're seeing now. And I said, man, if this guy grows into his body, he's going to have a chance to be a great player. That all changed for me when I went and watched him wrestle in Waterloo, and I watched this guy pin somebody in 11 seconds, and then it was a tournament, and then the next guy 2 hours later in about 24 seconds, and I'm like, well, this guy, we can't grayshirt this guy, or ask this guy to grayshirt. Like, this guy's good enough to play for our football team now. And I'm really glad we made that decision. Whether we would have got Zach or not, I don't know, but you know, I know Zach's got great ties here, but you know, I think it was a mistake by me asking that to happen, and you know, so that mistake was honest because of what he looked like at that time. But you know, what you see now and why he's been able to play is because the one fabric that I loved about him from the beginning, the consistency of attitude and effort. And let's just think what that kid did in the game. He played every rep for us almost on defense. Every critical play in the fourth quarter he made. He had the tackle for a loss in the counter play, batted down the ball, and he's the guy that forces the fumble. Played outstanding, graded out at championship level for you know, his performance. And the guy's played more snaps than anybody. So I think, again, what I love about him, the same guy every single day. He's the same player. He practices that way. And the great ones we've had here since I've been fortunate to be here, they've all had that same ingredient. They practice incredible. They're the same guy in the classroom. They're the same guy in how they carry themselves in the weight room, and they're the same guy on Saturdays. And Zach has all those qualities and more. So we're really fortunate to have him. He's been a difference maker for us, for sure.
How soon after that wrestling meet when you saw him did you say, okay, like decide to?
Well, I think he came Sunday. He wrestled that Friday. I went and watched him. I think he did his official visit. He had to do it on it was a Sunday-Monday trip because I know he's going to see a couple other schools. And, you know, I just said, listen, you know, probably had the same conversation we just had here. I made a mistake. Like, you know, I don't want you to grayshirt. I want you to come right now. And obviously, you know, the rest of it has been very fortunate for us and you know, explained why. But, you know, really appreciate him and his family trusting in us and myself that we would do right by him.
What do you make of Austin Kendall's 4 interceptions?
Yeah, I really don't make much because, to be honest with you, when I watch him, Randy, I watch kind of like Pet. You see a guy that didn't get there, didn't have all those reps that you would have had you been in the system for the last 2 or 3 years. You see a guy that is really performing at a really high level for the amount of time and repetition that he's gotten in this offense. And I think the thing that's really impressive is, yeah, sometimes you're going to have some mistakes early in the season. It's the big throws he's making. It's the ability to make plays with his feet. He's certainly got some really talented guys that he can spread the football to. But, you know, what they're asking him to do, they're playing at a really high tempo offense. They're getting a lot of plays off and really putting the entire game in his hands. And I think he's done a great job giving themselves, their team, the ability to win big games, but also putting his team in position to win games. So, you know, a lot of credit to him. He's done a really good job in a short amount of time in terms of repetition and practice.
Your offensive skill players have done a pretty good job when the ball's, you know, when you're in the passing game, you've been able to catch it cleanly when they've had a window in a pocket. What's kind of gone into their success in that, and then kind of just speak to maybe Deshaun Pay and his role in that, with giving the ball and those balls that come his way.
You know, and I think one of probably the hidden stories is Coach Shieldhouse moving to the wide receivers. You know, I think one thing about Nate is, number one, being a quarterback, he's got such a great understanding of what the quarterback's expectation of a wide receiver is. And I think that's really big. I think number two, Nate's a star in the making in the coaching profession, and his ability to understand that fundamentals and details are still the principle of you being successful. And so I think his alignment, assignment, catching the football, those details never go into practice unnoticed or untouched. And I think what you see is you see us probably catching the ball maybe as good as we have over the last couple of years. And Nate's done a great job of that detail piece of it, which I think is really, really important. And then you're right, you better have a leader and an anchor that's doing it from the player piece of it, and that's Deshante. And I think where Deshante's improved so much is his ability to really fall back into his fundamentals. Deshante's now practicing like what I talked about, some of the great players that we've had here. If you come to practice on Tuesday and Wednesday, you're like, man, Deshante Jones, that's the same guy I see making some great plays on Saturday. And maybe that hasn't always been Deshante's case, but I think that's where his growth from a freshman to where he's at now, that's the greatest strides he's made, and that's catching the football. That's getting out of my route. That's knowing exactly what we're trying to get accomplished. So when I go on the practice field on Tuesday, it's not the first time I heard it. And so give him credit, the senior leadership, and obviously what Coach Shieldhouse has done. I think both those guys doing a great job.
You mentioned earlier that you thought that the guys, it was a relief for games to get to work. How did you see that manifest itself either through the week or on Saturdays?
Yeah, it probably started with me, to be honest with you, because I felt like, holy smokes, man, let's just get it over. Where I used to really enjoy the games. And, you know, I just think sometimes when you want to be so perfect so bad, and you want to put those guys in position to be successful so bad. And I think if you know our staff, from Coach Aycock to Coach Manning to every one of our coaches, I would say, man, our kids are overachievers, but I would tell you, I think that's how we've worked. As you know, we know who we are, and we got to work really hard to be the best version of us each and every Saturday. And so I think sometimes you get to the point of, man, I want to do that, and man, instead of enjoying the game, instead of enjoying and trusting that, man, everything I've done is put myself and our kids in position to be successful, and then helping them through it, you're almost like, man, I just want to get through it. And I felt like, I think for myself, to watching and feeling some of our guys press through the game, and I really felt that coming back from Baylor, you know, watching the game, some of our guys, it wasn't an attitude, it's never been an attitude and effort standpoint, but some of it's been, man, like they're pressing, they're doing some things uncharacteristic throughout the football game. Why are those things happening? And, you know, just sitting down and talking with them and having those conversations on Sunday after that game to some of our, what I call our A players. And, you know, for us to be successful, our A coaches and our A players got to get A's on Saturdays. And, you know, we talked just a bunch about that and trying to figure those things out. And, you know, my job as the coach when it's not happening is finding out why and then trying to get a plan to get that figured out. And I think I felt that, but probably didn't do enough about it early on. And you know, I think really glad I had some of those conversations and really had to have probably some of those conversations with myself too.
Neil Brown said that one of the things in defending Purdy on the ground, especially this week, is giving him different looks than they gave Ellinger last week. You mentioned this earlier, and Baylor, you said that he made in-game adjustments. How have you seen that evolve? Is it just the time, or have you seen different communication, you know, when he puts the headset on the sideline when he comes out?
Yeah, I think both, to be honest with you. You know, I think that's one of the things that I really do enjoy about Brock is you can have a really good in-game conversation about what do you see, what do you like, what don't you like. You know, half times are different this year than they were a year ago because some of that feedback and some of that feedback that we have for him can get immediately talked about and then dispersed through the offensive skill players, which I think is a huge positive. And, you know, Coach Gordon and him, you see it after every series. I mean, those guys are talking and communicating and adjusting from what coach is seeing up in the box to what coach is thinking to, you know, what's going on in the next series. And I think Brock's ability to process it and relay that information has been really positive for this team.
The last couple games, and I think you mentioned Landon before on special teams. I think he's one of these guys. It seems like you guys have been getting closer and closer to potentially blocking the punt. How much of that is a read for the game plan going into each individual game, what the other team does as far as a blocking scheme, and what does, you know, having those guys with that speed add in that value in that type of position?
You know, I think that was, you know, again, a big piece of even last Saturday's game, you know, where maybe we haven't gotten there, but at least affecting, you know, the punter at times. And I think that having guys that can really run like Landon, and you know, it's not just even a speed thing, it's also a knack deal, and you have to have guys that have a great knack to take off, they don't false step on the snap, blocking a punt is you almost gotta be perfect, and the punt team's gotta be a smidge off, and I think having some of those guys has been big, but for us it's scheme oriented, it's base game plan to game plan, and, and not, some games we've been more of a return team, sometimes we've been more of a block team, but I think always putting our best players, just like anything we would do, putting our best players in situations to be successful. And when we have tried to block punts, he's been an anchor and he's been inches away from it at times this season for us.
Marcel Spears has been kind of a beacon of consistency. I feel like, what do you think has enabled him to be good day in and day out?
Yeah, I just think, and he would tell you this, it would go back to his growth from where he was as a redshirt freshman in this program to who he is today. And, it's growing and understanding his own process to become the best version of Marcel Spears he can be. And, one of the things I love about him is he's been a great listener. He's been a great self-evaluator. He's had enough humility about himself that when he hasn't played well, to be able to address that and to figure out what he did well and what he didn't do well and how he can get himself going forward. And, I think on top of that, having enough humility about himself too, to bring others up with him. And I think his greatest growth was figuring out, how do I become the best version of me, to now I understand what it takes, what it's going to take, and having the ability to reach back and bring somebody with him. And maybe as good as anybody I've seen bringing somebody else with him. He's a pretty special guy, and he's got that ability to have great relationships with everybody in our program.
You talked about Zach Peterson's ability to wrestle, multi-sport, that kind of thing. How much do you put stock into a kid when you're recruiting him with a wrestling background or multi-sport?
Yeah, for me it's huge. I think one of the great crimes we're doing today with youth, especially youth sports, is we've gotten into this culture where, man, we got travel baseball and we got AAU basketball and we got these 7-on-7 leagues. And to be honest with you, I'd rather have a kid and one of the great things about being in this state, to be honest with you, is watching so many kids that are 4-sport athletes. And that wasn't that way maybe in Ohio, and it's certainly not that way down in some of the southern states where some of these kids are just specializing in sports, because the greatest ingredient you lose is you lose competition and how to compete. And you can't compete in a weight room, you can't go compete with a trainer, even though that everybody's selling you to go do that, but you can't. When you compete, is you're winner or you're losing, and you're figuring out a way to win. And I think that's what track teaches you. I think that's what wrestling teaches you. It's what basketball teaches you. It's what baseball teaches you. And so to me, that is a huge piece of our recruiting process, because it gives us at least one answer to the intangible that's really important. How do you compete? How do you act when things don't go well? How do you respond to adversity? We get to see it live and in color. And those things are really, really important to our staff, and at least in our evaluation of a young person coming here.
Matt, 23 in the red zone. Is it a discipline thing that when you get closer, they lock it maybe a little bit more? And how much do you like about those numbers at this point?
Yeah, funny statistics, and Chris has had a great stat that we talked about a little bit. Those stats are, it's like any stat. You can spin it any way you want, because we're talking last week about ball inside the 35-yard line, and we're punting the ball. So the biggest thing I love about our offense is we're moving the ball with great consistency. I think inside that 25-yard line, we are doing a really good job of finishing drives, and for the most part, finishing drives in the end zone, which is really important to our success. Still, I think as we continue to grow, it's getting that ball past the 50 and consistently getting points. And I'd say that's an area of continued growth for our football team in a lot of ways too. So I thought we were better last Saturday than we had been the Saturday before. But it's great that guys are starting to find an identity down there, and we're finding ways to use our players to put them in position to be successful, which obviously is huge to your success.
What would you say that identity would be?
Well, I think our players, finding our players and putting them in the best situation to be successful, and that's what's been fun about it, is we've got a lot of different guys, and if you see all those touchdowns, it's not just one guy. It's not just Akeem Butler throwing a fade. It's there's different guys being put in different positions to matchup-wise be successful, and I think that's been probably the most enjoyable part for me, is the multiplicity of being able to attack a lot of different ways and putting those playmakers in position to be successful.
Coach, we've asked you this just about every week as far as who's leading the pack with the running back group, and you've said consistently that, you know, no one has really separated themselves yet, but with the way Johnny Lane has played over the past 2 games, is it getting to that point for him?
Yeah, I would say, you know, we're getting a lot closer there. You know, Johnny has played really good football for us. You know, you've seen him get in the heat of the moment, those reps. And that's due to, number one, his consistency, like I said a little bit last week in practice. But then number two, now you're starting to see game production. You know, I thought Johnny had a great game last week where he got the tough yards in some critical moments. And I thought those things were really, really important for this football team. And, you know, again, not to say some of these other guys, we'll see. You know, we're going to see what continues to happen along the way. But I'm certainly really proud of Johnny and what he's done, and certainly see him as a guy that's taken a great advantage of his opportunities in the last couple of weeks.
All right, Coach, thanks.